Well, we've been talking about the requirements of a woman to be considered a widow that could be supported by the church. Basically, Paul has given a list of requirements that she has to be over 60 years of age. So she's really no longer into the child rearing stage of her life. She's not probably going to be looking for a new husband to support her and care for her. Secondly, that she was faithful to the husband that she was married to, that she has a good moral upstanding character. And thirdly, she has to be known, he said, by her good deeds. And he lists the first of those as bringing up her children. And yesterday I kind of pontificated for a bit on about the importance of raising kids and the roles especially that mothers play. Mothers and dads play very different roles in effect, because kids oftentimes get their sense of identity. There's something healthy about kids seeing dad get up every day and going to work. They see him working in the yard, doing a lot of responsible and husbandly things and fatherly things. When fathers play with kids, they play with their kids in a totally different way. We often call it roughhousing. And, I used to love it. My kids used to love it. We used to love and roll around the floor and do all those, wrestle with each other. And it was just, a very physical interaction, whereas mom's is much more emotive, much more relational. And moms are really a source of real comfort. So in a way, it's like dad give their sons and daughters confidence, and moms give their sons and daughters comfort. And we need both of those. And I know that some of you who are listening to this are single parents, and I know that makes it very, very difficult. And I would just simply say that you can't be both mom and dad, as much as sometimes they say those kind of nonsense things in our culture. What you can do is pray that God would be the father to the fatherless, that he would fill in that void that he or she has because they don't have a father, or if they're missing their mother, that there would be that ability to bring that kind of emotional comfort. That oftentimes, if you're a single dad, having grandparents, a grandmother, and people like that involved, or even a family friend who begins to just show that kind of motherly concern and care, is really critically important. And I would encourage you to prayerfully seek God for ways of addressing that issue. But moving on from there, I would say that the next thing that he says, the second thing he says a widow should meet, is the requirement of showing hospitality. And interesting word, this word hospitality literally translates a love of strangers. And it doesn't mean that you're going out and you're trying to find people to care for that you don't know. But it really came to mean this idea that when people came into your environment, they came into your home, that you made your effort to show them that they were welcome and that they were cared for. One of the things that's always amazed me with my wife is that when we have people who come and stay with us, and it happens on a fairly frequent basis, she goes out of her way to make sure that anything they want and any need they might have at any time of day is going to be met and be taken care of. That she's very, very conscious that when they're in our midst, that they feel like they're valuable and they're important and they're cared for. And that's the idea of hospitality, that even when we think about settings that we do at our church, we want our church to be a place that feels hospitable. We want to feel like people come in at some place that they can feel welcome and warmth. And that's why we provide food, we provide coffee, we provide all sorts of refreshments. We provide comfortable places for people to just sit and socialize. We're always thinking and conscious of those kind of things because we want to be hospitable, so that when we have strangers who don't know us, they very quickly can begin to feel like this is not only a comfortable place, but it's a safe place. And we particularly think about that when we do ministries for children. We want them to feel safe and comfortable and loved and valued, so that learning the things of God is always associated with a very positive emotional and physical feeling. That safety is our highest priority, but secondarily, so is just caring for them and making them feel welcome and comfortable. So this is a thing that has wide application when we talk about showing hospitality. It doesn't just mean bringing people into your home. It means whether you're bringing them to your church, your office, or whatever environment, you're doing it in a way that makes them feel safe and makes them feel valued and appreciated. Someone once said that one of us wants the same thing ultimately. We want to know that we're fully known and that we're fully loved. And here is really the great challenge I found, that we fear that if people fully know us, they aren't going to fully love us. If you knew me through and through, you wouldn't like me, is the thought that many of us have. And yet, the responsibility that we have of Christians is, once we fully know people, that we also are committed to fully loving them. And we love them in the truth. It doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior or ugly habits, but what does mean is that we have a commitment to them. That's what friendship means. Friendship doesn't change because the situation has changed, the circumstances has changed. And that's the way it should be in terms of how we see each other, even in the church, that you and I may have very different opinions, but to terminate relationship because of that is really, really not healthy and good for anybody. And yet it's something that happens all the time in our culture. So the idea of showing hospitality is, that I value the relationships, and I treat the relationship as something that I value. And that's where the second thing that comes in that's really strange to us, when he says they're washing the feet of the saints. Well, when you came to somebody's home, you had been walking down a dusty road. Your feet were probably scratched and bruised and swollen, and you had all sorts of mud and dirt and other things, that even animal refuse that might be on them. And every home had a servant or at least those who had the means, who, when somebody came to their home, they would come and they would literally wash their feet. They would, it wasn't an extensive foot massage, but basically the idea is, I'm going to get the dirt and all the impurities off of your feet so that your feet are clean when you come into my home, which is a blessing for me, but also it's a sign of reflection and acceptance. Remember how Jesus talked to one of the Pharisees when the prostitute came into the Pharisee's house while Jesus was eating at a feast, and she began to weep and wipe off his feet with her tears and her hair. And the Pharisee said to himself, well, if this man was a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this was. And Jesus said, perceiving his thoughts, said to him, Simon, I came into your house and you didn't wash my feet. You didn't do anything, which was a basic act of hospitality that he neglected to do. In other words, he didn't want to show that he respected Jesus, but he wanted to have Jesus come into his house. And so he neglected this basic courtesy. It's almost kind of like you today, if somebody were to come to your house and you would say, well, why don't you just sit on the porch and I'll talk to you through the screen door. It's almost that kind of, disrespect and discarding of a person's welfare. And basically, but Jesus went on to say, but this woman has not ceased to wash my feet with her tears and dry my feet with her hair. And basically, he was telling the guy, it's not, who does the most, but he who has been forgiven the most is the one who loves the most. And basically, he was commending her because of what she was doing. Well, this whole idea of washing people's feet is a basic form. It was a basic form of hospitality and welcoming people into your houses. Today, we don't have that problem. There are people who require guests to take their shoes off when they come into their house, but that's only a matter for the cleanliness of the home. It's not showing a courtesy to those individuals. We don't have to do that anymore, but it's the same idea that when somebody comes into my home, I'm going to serve their needs and make them feel like they're valued and they're welcome in my presence. And then thirdly, he adds on to it, or say fourthly, he adds helping those in trouble. That many times when people have troubles, people want to, be as far away from that as possible. We say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got too many of my own problems and I can't help you. And that's not always unjustified, I want to say. The Apostle Peter said we can't leave prayer and the Word of God to go take care of the widow's needs, but we need to make sure that there are people who recognize that they're appointed to that role and make sure that they're doing it. So the idea of helping people in trouble means that we do what we're able to do. In fact, the scriptures in Proverbs said when we have it within our means to help somebody who's in trouble, we should help them. And so that's the whole idea, that we don't just say, sorry, dude, you're on your own, and then move along. And that's why, last of all, it says that she has devoted herself to all kinds of good deeds. All kinds of good deeds. In other words, this is just a person who has a reputation for doing good. It reminds me, the only example I can think of in the scriptures, of course, in Acts 9:36, where Peter was in the city of Joppa, and it mentions that there was a disciple by the name of Tabitha, that's translated into Dorcas. Basically, she was always doing good and helping the poor. So here was this woman who had a reputation for always extending herself to helping people out. And essentially he said, the widows that we bring into the daily distribution should be people who are known for that kind of caring and service and ministry to others. Well, again, we'll continue this as we go on to tomorrow, looking at verse 11. God bless you. Go in His grace.